Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 2. So, we have this episode that I would describe it as, like, very thin. We just have kind of just two stories in this episode. I think that the episode is still good. I would still give it a thumbs up. It's probably just, I would say it's a good episode. But it's just just thin. The way it begins, though, I really liked how we're still going on and kind of giving you the beginning of this infection to where it is now is just kind of how I like those two kind of approaches. It's really interesting to kind of give us, like, not exactly the patient zero, but close enough in the beginning, and having this scientist needing to tell these lieutenant generals and stuff what could possibly be the worst case scenario here. And then we go on and have Joel and Tess needing to understand the value of Ellie and have Ellie understand the infected and the kind of different varieties of which that exist, which of course there is certain names for certain infected, kind of like for Left 4 Dead, how you would go on and at some point kind of give them like specialty names. Like there's certain ones that are called like Tank or Boomer, or and so on and so forth. So, as if I've played that game enough, but probably don't exactly know all the names. Runner and so on and so forth, which kind of at some point you have like zombie games and stuff that you always have to have like the same kind of specialty names for things. Anyways, let's go on. So with that said, that is about as much as I can go on and honestly talk about this episode without kind of giving things away, because very thin. So with that said, this is going to be a very quick thing before I go into spoilers. Letting everybody know, like, normally they would probably see certain reviews that I've done and be very descriptive. I'm kind of being loose with this one. I'm just kind of, whatever I can remember is whatever I can remember. So, and plus, this episode might be a little bit easier than certain other things that I've gone on to do in my time here. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just double five this bad boy up. And it's about that time, yet again, to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. Yeah. For how very short the teeing up and everything is, that kind of tells you a lot about this episode. So, if you haven't not quite caught it yet, because maybe you're very unsure about the show, and I completely understand that. Yeah. So, the beginning of this is to have a woman in a restaurant called Rotna, and Rotna is to be grabbed by this Lieutenant General Angus, and they are in this car together, and so Rotna is like, well, like, I'm not being arrested for anything, am I? And the Lieutenant General's like, no. And so Rotna's like, well, are you sure you got the right person? And Lieutenant General goes on and states, like, well, you are a professor of mycology, and you are from the University of Indonesia, and you are Rotna, and so, like, yeah, we have the right person. So Rotna is taken to this laboratory, And she is to be given this sample in this microscope and told, okay, like, look into this microscope and tell me, like, what this is. So when, like, one of the people starts talking about the sample, Lieutenant General tells her no, like, do not tell her a thing. I want her to come up with her own consensus and just kind of let her look into this because she's an expert in this field anyways. So Rana looks into it, and immediately she ends up saying this very long word that I probably will butcher. So she says that this is a Ophicordicipes. Orphicordyceps. Orphicordyceps. Sure. That's as close as I can get it. And so she states that this is an unusual way to have gotten like this sample, and we have the lieutenant general that states like, well, like, this is the way that we would normally get a sample from a human. And Ratna's like, wait a minute, like, a cordyceps can't survive in a human. And so, like, well, come with us. So Rodna goes on into this hazmat like equipment, and the lieutenant general's off to the side, just kind of talking to her, while we have Ratna who is to dissect this woman, and they talk about her leg, and then they go to her mouth, and the more Ratna starts dissecting this person, she is to become even more just kind of frightened by what she is to see. We even have the lieutenant general that tells Ratna, it's like, well, hey, like, if you start to get sick, like, get out of here right away. Yeah, like, if you're gonna barf, like, try not to barf in the in your equipment. So Ratna starts talking with the lieutenant general, and they want to try to figure out like where like this all started. So Ratna asks like, okay, like, so what happened to this woman? And come to find out, they had like had to forcibly put her in this bathroom, and they locked her in there, and the police came in and they shot her. They had to kill her. And supposedly this woman was not patient zero, so patient zero is still out there somewhere. And Ratna is to ask like how many people were working at this kind of grain uh like factory or facility, and they state that there were 14 there. So we have a lieutenant general that asks Ratna, okay, since you are the specialist of this field, you need to come up with a medication. You need to come up with a vaccine. And Ratna looks at them and tells them there is no medication. There is no vaccine. The only way that you can go on and stop this from spreading is by bombing this area. And so Ratna tells Lieutenant General that she would like to go home now and be with her family, realizing that her life and or world is doomed. And I'm like, man, like, what an impactful way to just start out this episode. I was like, wow, all right. So, yeah, it was in subtitles, but still, um, like I wish there possibly would have been a little bit more like emotion somewhere, but it is what it is. So we transition into the Joel, Ellie, and Tess story. So this side of the story gets us to like show off more infected, and we start to get to like see uh like the clickers and some kind of more interesting infected, and at some point we'll probably further go on and probably see more like specialty zombies or specialty infected where they'll get like more grotesque and bigger and whatever at some point. But for now, we're just kind of going on with possibly showing some runners and some clickers, and I think there might have been like some stalkers somewhere in there, like stalkers and runners. Like you can't like heavily tell the difference between the two. But so with that said, and plus also like I was kind of watching this like not exactly on HBO. It was like a bootleg thing, and so anyways, uh, we have Ellie that wakes up and she talks to Joel and Tess about how like weird it was that they were to kind of just sleep in this location, and Ellie didn't probably think it was safe enough, and like for the three of them, it's like, well, it's not like we're gonna really sleep here long, so like that made a lot of like that would make like a lot of sense where you'd have like I'm sure people just kind of not sleeping in shifts. So we have them, since Ellie is to now be awake, we have them need to know like how valuable Ellie really is, because of course they want to go on and get a car battery. They want to get some stuff, and so finally, like we have Joel and Tess who really want to know how valuable Ellie really is, and so Ellie is to show them her arm and realize that she is possibly the cure for not becoming infected because she had gotten bitten and nothing had happened afterwards. That she had went to this mall and like she didn't think any infected would be in there, and come to find out she out of nowhere got attacked by a zombie and didn't get infected, surprisingly enough. So Ellie goes on with the group, and so they're making their way to get to these people to hand Ellie over. So we get to where these three are to go into this building, and they're walking uh, into this hotel. We have Ellie that makes these kind of like hotel puns where she's like dinging this bell, and she's kind of moving these like kind of luggage racks, and having like this fun joke, and Ellie's talking about how gross this is because the bottom of this hotel is kind of filled with this kind of gross like water. So Ellie and Joel are to kind of hang back while Tess needs to go like around in this area to open this door to hopefully further get them uh, to a place where they can see like where the infected are from like a higher vantage point. So while Tess goes on to kind of maneuver, even though Ellie is smaller, it's like, well, yeah, but like if Ellie gets hurt or dies, then like Joel and Tess's like whole journey here was wasted. So Joel and Ellie, while Tess is doing what she's doing, they both start talking. So Ellie is to ask certain things about Joel, whether like Joel and Tess are to be an item, and when Ellie starts asking more and more about Joel, Joel's like, I don't want you to ask me a single thing about me. And so Ellie's like, well, okay. So how long do infected live? And so Joel says it's like, well, like there's certain infected that could like live for a month or two, or there are certain other ones that can live for 20 years. So it kind of just all depends. So Ellie opens, or Ellie, Tess opens the door onto the other side, and oh, we also had the moment where Ellie was to be kind of messing with this knife, and we had Joel who asked Ellie, it's like, well, hey, like, how did you learn how to do that with that knife? And Ellie states the circus. So is Ellie gonna be a knife thrower sometime soon? Anyways, so Joe, Ellie, and Tess make their way to this kind of observation kind of location. So they're looking out and they're seeing like a bunch of zombies kind of down this one stretch of road. And when like the sun would hit them, like the zombies start to, or the infected start to move. So Tess starts talking about the zombies, and the way of which that she talks about it, it sounds like they have like a hive mind thing going, where if one infected pack are to hear somebody or know like food is nearby, another infected pack will probably also get a sense of that and come on over because they're like, ooh, a meal. And like those infected know that there's a meal over here. So, hey, I'm going to see if I can get uh, a piece of that meal also. Or maybe they won't get it, but I will. So I was like, okay, like that's an interesting way to kind of like quickly explain these zombies, and to also state there's kind of a different like variety of them, and there are kind of specialty kind of zombies, and we even have a one point where all three of them were at this like bridge, and they hear one of the zombies kind of cry out, and they're like, oh crap, like I hope that isn't the infected that we think it is. But Joel is like, okay, just kind of just keep going. So the three of them decide that they need to go into this museum because they can't take the long way, and so now they're gonna have to take the short way. So they go into this museum, and Joel is to kind of test and hope that like this whole building is to have kind of been burnt out, and so meaning that like somebody had probably set fire to this building, and that there shouldn't be any infected in there. So they start to go into this museum, and Joel tells Ellie, it's like, well, hey, like, we're not just gonna need to go on and be quiet, we're gonna need to be silent. So, because once they get further in this museum, they see the one guy is to have gotten, like, really just torn up and brutally killed. So, they go further into this museum to meet up with some clickers. And so we have the three of them just kind of stop in this one location as the clickers start to move. And Ellie goes on and makes this kind of just slight noise, and the clickers start attacking. We start to have them like burst into shooting and firing and what have you. So this action sequence was pretty great, and we go on to have Joel, who is kind of trying to have like most of the infected kind of get on him, and so the three of them, it seems, are lucky to have gotten out of this, and they shoot one of the zombies down like multiple times, and then Tess is to axe one of them in the head, but they have to kind of make sure it's dead also. So they get to the roof of this museum, and we have Tess that starts to bicker with Joel and Ellie, and come to find out Tess had like twisted her ankle. So Ellie again is to have kind of sliced her arm from the infected, and she's like, well, hey, if anybody is to go on and getting hurt, like, I guess it's lucky that it's just me. So Tess has a twisted ankle, and so Joel tries to kind of put tape on it, maybe a splint or whichever. So Joel is possibly like worried that Ellie, like, maybe she was lucky first time around, maybe she won't be so lucky this time. And so Tess goes on and is like, well, like, then go on and just kind of look after her. Like, so Tess is just kind of ticked, so Joel just starts to walk off. Tess and Ellie are to kind of look at this view while Tess is kind of taking care of her leg. So the three of them go down this ladder, and so all three of them get to this truck, and they find in the truck that it's completely empty, and so they head into this location, and they're like, okay, like, did like Fedra come in here and like wipe these guys out? Like, what happened? Because the one place that Ellie was supposed to go had all of those guys get killed. So come to find out, one of the guys had gotten sick and then got infected, and so that started to spread from all the other guys, and so like they started to just kill one another off. So it's like, well, of course, like the one spot that they need to bring Ellie to is to now be like, well, like, we need to figure out a plan B. We need to figure out how we can exchange this girl and get something out of it. Plus, also, they're still looking for Tommy, who has to have headed to Wyoming. So because that's the whole story from the first episode. So we now have the other infected that are to be alerted of Joel and Ellie and Tess. And so there's a swarm of infected coming as these guys have kind of gone on to kill too many infected, because one of the guys who was infected kind of wakes back up, and when Joel shoots it, that's when the other infected are like, hey, like there's a meal over there. So Tess is to go on and just start dumping barrels of gasoline. And so Tess now has to go on and tell Joel that him and Ellie need to go off, and come to find out that's all because Tess is infected. She shows her neck to Joel, and Tess tells Joel, it's like, well, I only have so much time left, so like you guys go on ahead, and like I'll just kind of I'll start defending this location. So Joel and Ellie start going off, and so what happens is that Tess is to try to light this lighter as these zombies start to surround this location and even get inside, to the point of one of the zombies infecting like Tess and almost like kind of kissing her in a very odd like way. We have Tess who's to get the lighter. She drops it. The whole place, the whole like level that she was in explodes, and so Joel and Ellie like are to, of course, to now like need to just kind of continue to just keep going and to not look back, because Tess was infected anyways. So it's not like Joel really had any time to grieve or mourn or whatever. It's just like, no, like let's just keep going. So with that said, that goes on and like quickly like describes this whole episode, but uh maybe people went on and was to have liked a quick description. But either way, I think it's about that time to let everybody know. If there is something that I did forget or whatever, let me know in the comments below. But I can also state that I kind of wanted to do this quickly anyways. And so with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.